Hey, Sonder here. Alright, so there's an issue with the word socialism, especially in America. It's very scary. The Republican Party has been throwing the word around as something to fear for decades, associating it with everything from paying private health insurance companies, from the state treasury, to regulating fracking, to the USSR. There's a lot of misinfo out there, so I'll make this quick for people who are in a rush. Capitalism is when the means of production are privately owned, usually as a way to achieve mountains of cash and power for the owners. Socialism is when the means of production are socially owned, usually as a way to achieve the equality of communism. And communism is a classless, stateless society. Wasn't so hard, was it? Yeah, these definitions are really straightforward. So where does all the confusion come from? Well, I'm trying to make this video as accessible as possible, so I won't go into detail about how I think the right has misused the term in bad faith to fearmonger and generally muddy the waters in political discourse. Instead, I'll just passive-aggressively mention it like I did there. Seriously, people on the right, keep listening. This is on Fox News, not you. If we're being charitable, there are other reasons why these terms could easily be misunderstood even without the interference of media. The history of these two terms are confusing in a way that does make it hard to understand what someone means when they talk about it. It somewhat depends on their perspective. Capitalism's definition is the easiest to clarify. According to Wikipedia, in Marxist literature, private property refers to a social relationship in which the property owner takes possession of anything that another person or group produces with that property. The key here is the owner/owners are not currently the producers on said property. In other words, private property necessitates a kind of theft. That's usually what leftists object to about it. The property owner takes what others, namely the producers who use their property, create. As the documentary The Bee Movie says, they make the honey, and we make the money.
They make the honey, and we make the money.
They make the honey, and we make the money?
Memes aside, this mode of production has some serious inherent flaws, especially when combined with the profit motive and markets. I really am just scratching the surface here, and I plan to make a few more videos on these topics. Just to keep things on task, though, I'll move right on to socialism. Thank you, Adderall. It's socialism's definition that usually trips people up, and it's more understandable when this trips people up. To an extent, this just makes sense. Most of the problem comes from the word social in social ownership, and in the time-honored tradition of leftist infighting, there has been a lot of historical disagreement around what exactly this word means. That does not mean that there is an equal interpretation of what this word means in the modern day, though, and colloquially there is kind of a right way to interpret it, I believe anyway, just on the grounds that the other one doesn't make much sense. So let's get into it. Obviously, my take is true and based, and all others are false and cringe. I'll support my argument, I promise. So it is not just Republicans and Fox News that have attempted to alter the term's definition. Stalin, Mao, and Kim have all warped the term to a greater or lesser extent by insisting that social can mean state-owned or nationalized. Marxist-Leninists, or tankies as they're derisively called, defend this definition as the lower stage of communism. Sort of we're getting there type of socialism, which is going to eventually lead to communism. I assure you, citizens, just give us a few more decades. However, in my opinion, and in many modern leftist opinions, they radically misread Marx's comments on how the state exists to enforce class difference and private property. In the Communist Manifesto, Marx said that once the proletariat seizes power, the state will wither away. MLs then used this one line to justify decades of withering away with extremely centralized, hierarchical, pretty undemocratic power wielded by the state. How they think that a state, a self-justifying system of power, could ever create a stateless society is beyond me, and seems definitionally contradictory. There's a reason that this definition is pretty wrong. I, personally, deem this interpretation cringe. But anarcho-leftists, on the other hand, anarcho-communists like me, believe that the best way to create communism, a stateless, classless society, is to not use a state. Fucking duh. Anarchist definitions of socialism generally center around direct worker ownership of the means of production, which, in modern terms means companies, factories, farms, anything that produces goods or services. In other words, the employees at Wendy's own Wendy's. They vote for any important decisions that Wendy's branch has to make, and they generally share the rewards of operating that particular franchise. This is based and true and accurate, and the only correct interpretation of socialism. In all seriousness, it genuinely is the only one that particularly makes sense. Social ownership is obviously not accomplished by a gigantic, often centralized, hierarchical power entity owning it. It's socialized by the workers owning it, because the definition of private property hinges on the owners taken from the producers. The producers owning it is an inversion of that. Another set of owners taking it is not a meaningful difference, on the other hand. Even if they intend to redistribute it, it doesn't really matter. It matters who owns it. /rant. When it's talked about today, the most popular stream of socialism in America is democratic socialism or social democracy. They're very similar. That's sort of AOC and Sanders peddle, and which a lot of millennials and Gen Z believe in. And usually when they talk about socialism, this is closer to what they mean. So generally, anarcho-communists pair this type of direct democracy socialism with a principle called mutual aid. It replaces profit as the motive for going to work each day. This topic is very, very broad, and again, I'll get into this in a later video. I do, thank you Adderall, want to focus this video on the socialism definition. So, this particular topic might one day save the world. So I encourage you to watch the next one, your choice. More on that next time, and that's all for today. If you like this video, you can show me by subbing or liking it or commenting it or really just validating me in general. If you didn't like it, I'm very sorry. And it probably will happen again, to be honest. I tend to produce the same quantity and texture of bullshit at a pretty constant rate. So maybe this channel isn't for you. I don't know. I'll try to get better, I guess. Yeah, that's it. Have a good day, everybody.